watching your wallet, blood.
How about that?
The movie begins with Frank, a once powerful mob boss, finally tasting freedom after serving 14 years in prison. In his prime, he ruled New York's underworld, but upon release, he discovered his influence had vanished. The Colombian and Chinese gangs now controlled the streets, sidelining his old allies. Meanwhile, Emilio, a major figure in Colombia's crime world, stepped away to answer a call at a payphone when he was suddenly ambushed by a gang, caught completely off guard. His body was later put on public display as a brutal message, just as news broke of Frank's release. Elsewhere, Jimmy, Frank's trusted associate, was in a tense negotiation with King Tito, a Colombian drug lord, at a hotel. Annoyed by Jimmy's attitude, King Tito increased the deal price by 10%, frustrating Jimmy. However, Jimmy handed over a briefcase for the deal, only for it to be filled with tampons. Taking advantage of the confusion, Jimmy seized control of the situation, eliminating King Tito and his men. Later, Jimmy and his crew met up with Frank at a hotel, welcoming him back and updating him on their recent moves, including taking out Emilio and seizing Tito's assets and cash. They also informed him about an upcoming meeting with a middleman named Joey, prompting Frank to prepare. With support from his legal team, loyal politicians, and even a district judge, Frank met Joey and requested help setting up a meeting with Ree, a major cartel boss, under the pretense of restarting operations. After parting ways with Joey, Frank took a quiet subway ride with Jennifer, his advisor. Meanwhile, Joey went to a gambling parlor where Artie and his crew were enjoying the night. However, when Joey relayed Frank's message, Artie flatly refused, mocking the idea of working with Frank and insisting he would only deal with the Colombians. Elsewhere, Frank and Jennifer shared a quiet moment in a packed subway car, which was interrupted by three men trying to provoke Frank. However, upon spotting a gun under his jacket, their bravado turned into fear. Instead of resorting to violence, Frank chose mercy, giving them cash and inviting them to meet him later. Determined to take control, Frank and his crew, guided by Joey, confronted Reed directly. During the meeting, Frank made it clear that all future deals had to involve him, but Artie refused to cooperate. Left with no choice, Frank eliminated Reed and took over his operations. With obstacles removed, he called his former partners to regroup and solidify his power. Later, Frank met with the mayor to discuss delayed funding for a Bronx hospital. The mayor, evasive as ever, claimed there was no budget, challenging Frank to raise $16 million himself. Against his lawyer's advice, Frank accepted the challenge, determined to handle it on his own. Meanwhile, detectives Thomas, Roy, and Denise abruptly interrupted Frank's meeting, dragging him away despite protests from his legal team. Driving recklessly through traffic to avoid being followed, they took him to a secluded alley, showing him an unconscious Colombian cartel leader, Enrico. When questioned about the disappearances of multiple cartel figures, Frank denied any involvement. However, without concrete evidence, the detectives had to let him go, though they remained determined to investigate further. Joey later met with Wong, the Chinese triad boss, at a movie theater, delivering a business proposal from Frank. Wong demanded cash payment for a shipment of 200 items. Joey, sensing an opportunity, suggested looking into the missing cartel leaders, hinting that a face-to-face meeting between Frank and Wong could be beneficial for both sides. The next day, Jimmy stopped at a fast food joint, generously giving money to an elderly woman and her grandchildren. But the moment of peace was short-lived. Detectives and cops suddenly appeared, ambushing him. With no escape, Jimmy was arrested and accused of multiple murders, with Enrico's testimony serving as the key evidence against him. Meanwhile, Frank visited the struggling Bronx hospital, which was in desperate need of funds. He also resumed talks with Wong, proposing a partnership to sell goods together and split profits for the hospital. However, Wong stood firm, insisting on full cash payment. Back at his hotel, Frank learned of Jimmy's arrest and immediately ordered his team to act fast. That night, Jennifer and the crew orchestrated a daring jailbreak, freeing Jimmy from custody. Furious, the detectives arrived at the scene, but Jennifer coldly warned them that if they didn't back off, they would take the matter to court. Soon after, Frank's team identified the Chinese gang responsible for betraying them. Without hesitation, they launched an attack, wiping out the gang members. After the massacre, they captured Wong, forcing him to reveal his hidden assets. Despite cooperating, Wong met an inevitable end. Days later, thanks to Frank's generous donation, the Bronx hospital finally reopened. The news infuriated Detective Denise, who believed Frank had now become the true king of New York while law enforcement remained powerless. One night, Frank's team celebrated at a nightclub when Joey arrived with an LA drug lord interested in Wong's 200-item shipment. The buyer wanted to purchase it but could only pay half up front, promising to settle the rest after selling it in LA. Frank, however, refused, insisting on a full payment deal. The buyer requested to inspect the shipment before finalizing the deal. Suddenly, chaos erupted. Armed men stormed the location, launching an ambush. Frank quickly helped Jimmy escape, but during the getaway, an attacker latched onto their car. Realizing the man was an undercover officer, Frank made a swift and decisive move, which only enraged the other pursuers, Detectives Thomas and Denise. A high-speed chase followed, with Frank's car ramming into the detective's vehicle, forcing it off course. Jimmy took the opportunity to fight back and escape. Meanwhile, Thomas, determined to catch him, gave chase on foot while Denise searched the vehicle for Frank but found nothing. He had already vanished. Jimmy ambushes and mortally wounds Thomas. Dennis is unable to resuscitate his partner, and executes Jump in a fit of rage. A grief-stricken Dennis attends Flanagan's funeral, where he is abruptly assassinated by White in a drive-by shooting. White then confronts Detective Bishop in his own apartment. He holds him at gunpoint while explaining that he eliminated the Colombian drug cartel and triad in New York City because he disapproved of their involvement in human trafficking and child prostitution. White restrains Bishop to a chair and leaves. Bishop escapes his restraints and chases White into the subway. Both men draw guns on each other, but White uses an innocent bystander as a human shield. The two exchange gunfire and Bishop is killed. White exits the subway and makes his way to a taxi in Times Square. He clutches a gunshot wound to his torso and watches as police surround his taxi. White goes limp as the police close in on him.